I guess we're recording now. I don't have to touch anything on this screen. Okay, good. Linda, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and Leah will let us know them. We're gonna kind of hold questions till the end if that's okay with you guys. It's a small group, so.
I will, thank you. I will,
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay. Please bear with me because I haven't used this technology before. So we'll just see how it goes, you know? You're my trial group. I get to do this a second time with a different group. Okay, so our goal for this session is that by the end of it, you'll be able to effectively use the Journey to Success textbook. You'll be able to access the teacher's manual and the text online, and you'll know how to simplify your lesson planning process by using our prepared lesson plans. I don't know that it makes any sense to do Slido with 3 people, but let me show you this cool technology. If you have not used Slido before, you take your cell phone and you take a, you hold your camera up to the box, and then you click open Slido. And it should open you, it should take you right to that. Yeah, okay, it worked for one of you. Okay, good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move to the first question. So this question is showing up on your screen, on your device, and you can go ahead and answer it. And there's always a time delay. Good, I know who that is, thank you. I know what your answer is. So I kind of wanted to know who I'm talking to, right? I think everybody has just been assigned this textbook, that's great. You haven't, well.
I have nothing.
No, but you will get it, yeah. So you don't have any bad habits to break is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so you're not going to have any satisfaction with Journey to Success because you haven't started using it yet. So I'm going to skip this one. But this one, if you've done any tutoring, how long do you take, how much time do you spend getting ready to meet with your student? Because we know that tutors spend a wide variety of time. So Julie, as expected, spends an hour getting ready for each session, right? Yeah, that's a lot of time. And if you, we all know it's a lot of time. So we're going to talk today about 3 books in this series. We'll talk about the introductory book, 1 and 2. All of the books at this level are about learning to read. So all 3 of them stress phonics quite a bit. Well, we'll get into the first book in a minute. So there's phonics, sight words, a little bit of vocabulary and word analysis, and then an emphasis on fluency. The introductory level is almost exclusively phonics. So let me get to the right page in here so I know I'm telling you everything I want to tell you.
Lisa,
Yeah.
you have to share it
Oh,
on your Zoom.
oh,
They can't see.
she can't see it.
Right. So, on Zoom, you need to share it over.
Yeah, but I can't find Zoom now.
And so you right.
Pop out. Thank you.
The 3 dots on the bottom of the word should have share screen.
Share screen. And this is what we're doing.
Yeah, you can just share your screen. That way, if you change things.
Was that the right thing or not? The right
Yeah,
thing?
it's fine.
I'm-
It works.
Okay, when I go to switch to the other, just remind me again.
Okay.
There
I
it
can
was.
see it now, thank you. I can see it now.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks, Winda. Okay. I apologize. As I said, this is my first time to try to make a presentation on this massive board. I did better when I was on my computer at home doing it. There's a lot less to think about. So the intro to, or the Journey to Success intro focuses almost exclusively on phonics. At the levels 1 and 2, it starts to introduce topics relevant to all adult learners, and it teaches strategies and skills that good learners use. It also supports process writing, and process writing is the term we use for repeated writing of a text. So as adults, we know that when we are sending an email to our boss, we should read it at least once to make sure that we didn't make any mistakes and the tone is right and all of that. Our learners don't always know those things, so that this is something that the textbook helps them learn. Yeah. So now, why is it not? So this slide shows you the parts of the lesson at the introductory level. And I'm not going to go through all the parts, but what I do want to say is you see that here there's a big picture. And this lesson is on Frank and his friends, and it introduces the sound that the letter F makes, right? So if you have a student, you're going to focus on that picture and ask them, what do you see here that starts with a F? Okay, so it's not going to work well with a non-native English speaker because they don't have any words that start with a F in that picture, right? They don't know what those things are. But with a native born English speaker, they're going to have, well, we can't see it well enough to know what's in there, but there are the flag, for instance. And then it goes, there's a warm up that introduces the F sound, then some keywords that are going to appear in this text down here. Say the words, write the words. Again, something non-native English speakers couldn't do, so this book isn't for them. So these are words they'll need to know for here. They're learning sort of sight words. Here are some vocabulary words: and, drink. I can't even read them. Friday, fin. Okay, and then below is what we call a close exercise, where they're going to be filling in the blanks with words that start with that F sound. Okay, and the word bank is on the side. So that's the first 2 pages at the intro level. At the next level, you guys over here. Oh, this is still, that's exactly the same page. My apologies. Every lesson, every book has reviews. In the first level, it's 5 or 6 chapters before a review. At the other levels, it's 3 lessons, 4 lessons, and then a review, 3 or 4. You don't want to skip the reviews. Even, yeah, you want to make sure you're spending a lot of time reviewing. At this level especially, review is as important as initial learning, because we all know how many times it takes us to learn how to use a smartboard. The first time, we're not good at it. Hopefully the second time we're a little better. And by the 3rd or 4th time, it's almost easy, right? So with a reader learning to read, it's the same thing. They need lots of practice doing this. And that doesn't mean they're not learning, just means it takes time. So the unit reviews are really important to take time together to do. At this level, we probably would not, the homework that you might assign, which we wouldn't call homework, we'd call it practice, things to do between sessions, right? Would be write the words on cards so that you can read them to yourself again, right? Don't you write them, have the student write them, okay? Because the act of writing also helps put it in their brain, right? And then just ask them to read the cards a couple of times a day, right? It's not a lot, we don't need hours of homework. We just need to keep repeating this a lot. It's the frequency of repetition that's almost more important than the amount, how much you do at once. Okay. There's also in the back of the textbook parts of a lesson reference pages. At this low level, it is words that they need to know, sight words, months of the year, days of the week, things like that. At the higher level, I want to emphasize if you're the higher level, in units 1 and 2, make sure you go over the to the learner pages in at the very beginning of the book with them. It's where the directions are explained for the rest of the section. Page 1, Maria, you're really bothering me. It's okay, it's all right. It actually has illustrations of what they're supposed to do. So if it says underline, there'll be a picture of a hand underlining. So they can go back and return to that if they don't remember what the instructions say, okay? And I think it will also explain what some of the rationale behind what you're doing, okay? So at this level, there are 4 units with 3 lessons each and then a review. Towards the back of the book are language skills mini lessons. These are 1-page grammar reviews. There is a prompt within the textbook for when you might want to use them. If that works, that's great. If you see that your student needs one of these things and you haven't assigned it, go back and assign it. If you think maybe we should do this now because I see that they're writing letters, I don't remember what's in that. But if there's something there that you think they need to focus on, go ahead and use it more than once if necessary. There's also a couple of pages on online and print dictionary skills, which might be useful. The thing that I want to point out is there is an answer key in the back of the book. This is not necessarily cheating. What you're going to do is teach them to check their own answers, okay? Have them write the answer and then go and compare it. That's a skill too. And it's not something that all students are aware they should do. I remember when my kids were little, they had trouble copying from the board, And I think it's the same sort of thing. Can you remember what you wrote on this page long enough to turn to the back and check it, right? That's a skill. So go ahead and teach those things. Okay. Let's see, we were just there. So this shot shows us parts of the lessons for levels 1 and 2. And this is the lesson that I handed out to you. We're going to talk about it a little bit more. We have the lesson plan to show you, which sadly I did not print for you. Could you? No, I saved it. Never mind. Sorry. My apologies. I can get it for you later today, but I don't have it right now. So let's take a look at this, what's up here. You'll see it mirrors what we just saw in the other lesson. There's a smaller photo. On this side, you'll see the goals for the lesson, right? And so when you start with a student, you're going to want, this is our first day with lesson 7. Let's look at these goals that we're going to work on. We're going to talk about these for the next 2 sessions that we meet. We're suggesting that this is not a terribly lengthy lesson. We still think it should be broken up into at least 2 days, okay? What we have noticed with tutors is that there's a tendency to rush, right? And part of that is that we know this material. And it gets a little bit dull. So we have to really consciously slow down, make sure that our students get to know it also. So then it will move to phonics. It always starts with a short warm-up paragraph that focuses on whatever the phonics skill is. In this lesson, it's the long O sound. and then the prefix un. So this is going to have a lot of long O's. On the next page, there is something else about that sound. In this case, it is that there are 5 different ways in English to spell O, which you know, but probably don't think about very often. But you can imagine that that's really hard for somebody learning to read. We don't remember learning to read, so it doesn't seem hard to us. Okay, so this points this out, that there are 5 ways, right? And you'd want to read all of this to your student. We don't expect students to read text like this. We expect you to read them, read it aloud. They should be able to read those words, maybe not initially, but you would read O is spelled O, bold, colt, go, and have them repeat, okay? All of this is spelled out in the teacher's guide, which you will also have access to. And I think for you guys, it's printed in that packet also, or it's separate. Okay. There are tips. Don't ignore the tips. Anything in a box, make sure you read with your student. And then there's some practice exercises for phonics, which you want them to try to do as much on their own as possible. Then there are still more phonics activities. This page is vocabulary, and you can see that at this level, there are 4 vocabulary words. And then they introduce this prefix un with words that we're thinking they may know already. Fair, sure, safe, kind, right? And then they have exercises to fill in the blanks with the words that they're looking at. Is it all there, Julie?
Yeah, I was just wondering why it moved from O to no O's.
Because you can't tell a whole story just with those, right? So they've introduced some other words that have to do with the topic, which, if you remember, is civil rights.
Right.
We're going to be reading about Rosa Parks in a minute.
Okay.
So these are the words that they want them to be able to read when they get to this article. Okay. If we only had O's, we couldn't say anything, could we? So, okay. The reading page always begins with a skill that good readers use called previewing. And they introduce different types of previewing as you go along. This one just has you look at the article and answer the questions. Who is this article about? What does the photo show? What does the diagram show? Right? We know that as good readers, I often ignore the diagrams, right? I look at them, I think, it's nothing there. But it's really often that contains really useful information that will make the article make sense, right? So we want to make sure we teach them to read the pictures too. What is this? I don't know, lots of boxes, right? I mean, you really have to think about it a little bit. You need to know that's a bus. Oh, okay. So look at all the pictures. And as I said, the teacher's guide goes through all of this. And then it's a fairly short article. The articles at this level, and I think at level 2, all fit on one page. What happens when you go to level 3 is you are suddenly reading to learn. It doesn't do phonics. It does words, word parts, other things. It gets substantially harder. There's a lot more text on every page. So that's why we divided the 2 sessions up the way we did. At this point, as I said earlier, we're still reading. We're learning to read. Okay. All right. Word parts are really focused on in this book because if you understand the parts of words, it opens up a whole lot more words to you, right? If you know that you can read the root of the word and add on the prefix or the suffix, suddenly you've got a word. You can read the whole word. Okay, so after the reading, sorry, I jumped around a little bit. After the reading, there's always an after you read set. These are essentially comprehension questions. You want the student to be able to tell you what they read. Tell me about what you read. What did you find out about Rosa Parks? And you want to stress, I don't want to know what you knew before. I want to know what you found out from this article, okay? Because this is not a social studies class per se, it's a reading class, right? So before you start, you may want to ask them, what do you already know? And then you would say, okay, now let's see what we're going to find out today, okay? So then it teaches a reading skill, right? That supports the standards that the state is asking us to use. So in this case, the skill that we're studying is cause and effect, okay? Then there's a phonics checkup. So write 3 words from the article that have the long O sound. That means they have to really look through the article for words with a long O sound. They're not being given such a small group of words to look at. It's a fair amount of text, right? Then there is this little fluency piece. I've suggested in the lesson plans that you give this to them as something they do at home, okay? Go back to the first page and read that short paragraph again. And then if they can handle it, the article as well. If they can't, just the phonics section's okay. The point is repeated readings speed them up, right? The more you read something, the more times you read it, the faster you're able to read it. The first time you read it, you're trying to figure out how to pronounce the words, right? Maybe the second time you figured out the words and now you have to think about how they go together, right? And there's also an instruction here for listen as your teacher reads each sentence, then read each sentence out loud. If you have a class, it's out loud as a class. Most of our tutors are working one-on-one with students at this level. Okay, as I mentioned to you, okay, then there's writing. See, the book just keeps going on and on. Then there's a writing segment. The writing always focuses, it's somehow related to the story that you read. So in this case, it's write about an experience, right? It tells the students exactly what they need to include, a topic sentence, sentences that give details, and events that are told in the order they happen, okay? Then it gives them some structure for planning their writing. In this case, it's sentence starters. So they don't have to come up with how to start the sentence, but they may need some help thinking about a time that they took a stand, right? They'll be given a prompt. In this case, it's think about a time that you took a stand. Doesn't have to be a major stand, right? Just something. Tell what the problem was. Tell what you did as a result. Okay, so this is the writing piece. Somebody else will deal with that. This is the writing piece. And then this is sort of the last, the published piece, if you want to say it that way. After they've written the second writing, you want to emphasize they need to go back and check their work, okay? This is where they decide if they made a mistake, okay? And you'll see over here, for practice using simple verb tenses, go to page 117. These are the one-page grammar exercises that are at the back. It tells you that this is maybe when you want to talk about simple verbs, okay? The last thing in every chapter is a little think and discuss that just sort of extends the topic of the lesson a little bit further. Usually gives questions. Why do you think this? Maybe a little bit of information. With the two of you, it can just be a conversation, right? You could later on ask them to write a paragraph. You know, there's no reason you can't extend this however you want, but this is what the book starts with. So every 3 lessons is a unit review. And at the end is the language skills mini lessons, and then the study skills pages. The teacher's guide walks you through everything, okay? In the lesson plans, I have referred you back to the teacher's guide a lot. My suggestion when you're teaching is read the teacher's guide first, maybe print out the lesson plan if you need it, and make notes on the lesson plan. Say this, do this, okay? Because I don't want to tell you, say this to your student. I don't know your student, you know? You're the one who's going to figure out how you want to word it. The lesson plan gives you a lot more information. So in this case, the beginning will talk about introducing the lesson, and we'll give you sort of an overview of what you're going to talk about in the lesson, and maybe some background history that your student might find useful, okay? Then it breaks it down into, I don't know, this is introduce the vocabulary, use the vocabulary. It'll go right along with everything in the book. It's pre-reading, there's check comprehension, the reading skill. Then the second day, yeah. Did I give you 2 readings? I don't know. There's a second reading. The second time you come back, there's a second reading on a similar topic. I don't think I gave that. It has you go through the same routines that you just went through. There's a pre-reading section, a few questions to answer, focus on the skill, the text to read, and then comprehension questions, and then a thinking process. Okay. But it walks, the teacher's guide is really helpful. It almost makes a lesson plan unnecessary. However, we're giving you lesson plans, so feel free to use them. Okay. Let's see. Oops. I think I said everything that was in the teacher's guide. Let's go back. So one thing I didn't mention is when you get a new book, read the introductory pages in it. Read, skim at least through the introduction to the textbook series. So you see where this book fits in the series, and you understand what it is that they're trying to do in this book series. And then read the introduction to the specific level. It's going to lay out the reading skills and the strategies that are going to be covered in the book. It will explain the reading skills and strategy. It's going to give you a lot of extra information. Also, in the back of the teacher's guide are a bunch of reproducible masters that you may want to give to your students. Okay, these include like vocabulary, blank vocabulary cards that they would fill out, lists of sight words, a list of common prefixes and suffixes, and graphic organizers. These are extra to what is in each lesson. So what have we provided that's different? Well, you had a brief look at the lesson plan. Can you see that, Leah?
No, mine is.
That's what I was asking. Okay, new share,
Lesson plan.
new share.
Lesson
If
plan
you just
slide.
share the screen at the
Yeah,
top, then
I
you
know.
don't have to.
I do know that, I just can't remember it. Yes,
No, yeah, it's on now.
I was writing down, reproducible masters. I didn't get over this.
On the PowerPoint.
yeah, I know what you mean. Let's see. Can I give you my paper copy and you can write it down?
Yes, that's
Thank you. You're welcome. I don't want to deny you that information. I'm not sure how to, I don't want to mess with that right now. Okay, so this is the lesson plan site. This is the book we're looking at. That's the level. I started to watch the video. I haven't finished watching the video. A lot of what it said that I saw was stuff I was going to cover today. More succinctly said. So, because I think it's 5 minutes long. So this lesson that we were looking at is here. You don't even have to touch it, it moves. It's a little bit scary sometimes. Come on, Come on. Why is it not
You could try to put it off to the right, where you see lesson 7 PDF.
here?
What you're trying to bring up.
Yeah.
Go down a little bit. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so this is what the lesson plans look like. Up here, we have what this lesson is working on, the major ideas, long O and identifying cause and effect, right? Huh, this doesn't show the latest. Oh, well, because that's back there. Okay, so anyway, now how do I close this up? There we go. In the middle here is the routine that we've looked at, that you were sort of introduced to when you did your tutor training. The routine, and I am going to show it to you because I didn't print it out for you like I meant. The routine takes the lesson plan and gives you sort of time increments for each section, okay? We always suggest that you spend some time when you first start meeting them talking with the student. I have had feedback from tutors that some of their ABE students don't want to do this. They just want to get started learning, okay? So that's fine, right? I've also heard that sometimes that's all students want to do. So, you know, you're going to have both. You're going to have to work with that, figure out how to rein that in. So then the lesson introduction and goals, this is when you're going to look at the picture. You're going to talk about what it is you're going to read about today. You're going to introduce the lesson plan using the teacher's guide. The lesson plan includes a few sentences which you can read aloud. Review what you'll work on during this meeting. I've reiterated lessons are expected to take about 2 meetings to complete. Don't rush. Okay, then there's a warm-up activity, which is the phonics. 2 pages, 3 pages of phonics. It's a lot, right? But it's a long warm-up. So I've guessed 30 minutes. Again, you may have a learner who writes quickly, but doesn't read. I can't quite imagine that, but you might, right? Writing is sometimes a difficult skill, the physical act of writing. They still need to practice it, right? We do still do some handwriting. You know, I don't want to suggest that you skip it, but there may be some times when you don't want to focus as much on actual physically writing. Okay. Then there's going to be, we're following this I do, we do, you do that the state suggests we use for our lesson plans. It's a little bit, it's hard because it doesn't always, our lessons don't always fit into these categories. So that's okay. The information is there. Use it the way you want to use it, okay? But the idea is initially you present to the students, and then you and the students together work on something, and then you sort of let them go, right? And they do something, right? And that's what's happening. It's just happening within all of the things you're doing, right? If you ask them to write, you've let go of the strings. They're now writing, right? Hopefully they are goal, right? And then we ask that you, at the end of the session, ask them, what did they learn? What's new? What are you going to remember next time? If they have questions, it's a good time to write them down so you can address them the next time. We're trying to introduce some thought processes that people do that help us function, right? That adults don't always pick up in school. They're so busy following the rules that they haven't stopped to think about why it is they're doing what they're doing. And that's really what we're doing here, is we're trying to get them to think about it, right? So we don't use the word homework. we're trying to stick to extra practice. You'll see homework a few times because, you know, it's hard to let go of things that we have always had in our lives. But we do think there's stigma attached to it for adults. And it's already difficult for adults to make time to meet with our tutors. We know that. So you'll also see whenever extra practice is suggested, there's usually another time in the lesson where we also remind you to do it, okay? If they can't do it at home and you think it's essential, do it with them, okay? We don't want to skip something. We're not in a hurry. We don't have to finish fourth grade in fourth grade, you know? We're going to finish it when we finish it. That's the beauty of what we're doing. So what I did here was I gave you two different routines for day 1 and day 2, because in day 2 is when you're doing the writing. Okay, so it's a slightly different series of things. You want to reread the story, talk about spellings, read it again. This is the fluency piece. And then you'll start work on the writing. This is the I do, we do, you do, is the writing piece. And then a wrap up and extra practice. Okay, let's see. Now I want to, so that's the routine. And I'm not going to do that. So I want to go back. There's too much up there. Huh. Where's my PowerPoint?
It should be at the bottom, in the bottom.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We are all
Computer
learners.
all day.
We are all learners. We're all at different stages on our path. This is something that I have reminded some of my tutors a couple of times, is when they don't know how to do something and they're online with their students, just relax and say, oh yeah, I don't remember how to do this. Let's figure it out, right? It's good modeling for our students as well as a good reminder for ourselves. Ah, that's not what I wanted. So this is what the lesson plan for lesson 7 looks like. That isn't the most recent copy, so I guess I saved that somewhere else. Up at the top is information about the lesson itself, just the main information. Here you've got the lesson goals again, written in. We want it to be learner-friendly language, but we also want it to be clear to you what it is you're trying to do. Then the vocabulary that will be introduced in the lesson, the language structure that's focused on, the materials that you need to use. This thing is driving me insane. Okay. And then it begins with the before you meet. So this is what you will need to do to prepare for your student, right? So essentially what you want to do to prepare is read through the lesson in the student's book, read through the teacher's manual, think about what else you might want to introduce that isn't there. Okay, this lesson plan, we assume will take about an hour and a half. That fits with what I gave you on the routine. If you're doing math with your student as well as reading, you may not want to use your full time doing reading. That's something, talk about that with your coordinator to figure out what the student wants to do and how best to divvy up your time. Okay, so let's look at the next page. Oh, look at this. I did give you this. Okay, so basic lesson information, lesson goals. And then here you see the full lesson plan. You'll notice that we have included standards at the bottom of the lesson plan. So they're there if you're a teacher and you want to look them up. The rest of us are going to just pretend we don't look at them. Okay, we've included extra practice suggestions. So day 1, you'd get started, you'd introduce the lesson and the goals. These are the activities you do. The pages are listed for both the teacher's guide and the text. So it really does run through what you need to do. But it still refers you back to the teacher's guide. For instance, I don't really tell you what cause and effect is about, right? That's in the teacher's guide. As are like how to teach the words, right? Things like that are all in, is in the teacher's guide. Okay, so day 1, day 2 is very, very similar, just focused on the writing, okay? So we already looked at the routine. This routine is 2 pages because it's a 2-day routine, right? And I put a few extra tips here. I'm not going to take time to go over them right now. I will get copies of these to you, although you'll have access to the website by Monday, we think. So, but I'll get them to you anyway. Let's see. Okay. So the anticipated rollout is the lesson plan site, and all the additional materials are going to go out in the next tutor newsletter. So maybe it isn't Monday, maybe it's the next tutor newsletter, but it's coming up. It'll be before the end of the month. We will be reviewing and revising lessons probably forever, but it says over the next few months. So we want your feedback. If you notice a typo and it bugs you, let us know. There's a really easy way to do it. And I might be able to get back and show you. It's right in the middle of that website. It says lesson plan feedback. So that also means that when you go and look at a lesson, it may look slightly different than what I give you today, or it might change from one time to the next as we are updating. Don't let that throw you. Just, you know, we want you to live with it, go with it. So you think you can turn off the recording? Do you have questions